welcome to another stretch video. So today we're going to be focusing on the hips and the lower body, but mainly deep stretches for the hips, so around the glutes, around your quads, just keeping everything a bit higher up in the legs. So in terms to support me today, I've got a couple of blocks. If you don't have blocks at home, you can use a pillow, cushions, fold up a blanket. Yeah, you've got a couple of options. So if you have a couple of cushions and pillows around and blankets, it's handy to have them nearby. If you've got a couple of blocks, I'm going to be using a couple of blocks today. So we'll start off just to get a little bit more mobility into the body. So we'll come into our hands and knees, so find a 4-point base. And just being aware of our pelvis here. So typically when we do cat and cow, we think a lot about our thoracic spine, so our upper back. And I want you to focus more on the pelvis, the tailbone. So we're just going to start to round through the spine. So think of creating that cat posture, but you're mainly focusing on the pelvis and the tucking under, and then start to release that to see if you can soften through the pelvis. Maybe creating an arch, maybe just softening and finding a more neutral posture. So we're going to round, so think of tucking under, and then we find that release, that soften. Let's do a couple more, finding that round, that tuck, and then let it soften. And then we'll do one more big round, and then let it soften. So we're just going to step our right foot forward now. So finding like a lunge position, but my left knee is staying down. So I've got my right foot in front, my left leg bent. If you need any cushioning underneath your knee, feel free to set that up now. We're just going to soften our hips slightly further forward. You can keep your hands down and then start to send the hips back. Work on straightening that leg, so focusing on a hamstring stretch here. So we're just going to bend forward. And on your exhale, start to press back. And how to bend, you can always bring your hands on blocks if you need as well. And then soften back. So this is just to lengthen through the hamstring and also to create a little bit of length through the left hip flexor through the front of that quad. A little bend and then press. This time as we bend, we're just going to take this foot slightly wider and set up for our dragon. So dragon, I've got an external rotation through the hip, so I'm letting that knee fall out and my inner arch to lift up. And then I'm working on softening down. So you can keep your hands here. You can also bring your hands on your blocks, or you can bring your forearms down and they might go all the way down, they might go on your blocks, might go on the mat. You can close down your eyes here and just start to breathe deeply in and out through your nose. I want you to feel sensation at the front of your left thigh, through that hip flexor, that's where I'm feeling it. And then also working on that softening through your right knee, through that hip, just allowing things to open up. You can soften your head. Maybe even maybe you can remove your blocks or your props and actually focus your forearms all the way down. Maybe you even want to rest your forehead on a block so you don't have to hold it up. Just ensuring you keep that deep breath in and out through your nose. And so this style of yoga, this type of stretching is really passive. So you can even stay here for longer than I'm cueing, longer than this video. If you want to get some real softening, really into that fascia, it's creating that real releasing and just surrendering to your body. We're going to start pressing through our hands now. So you're coming into a more upright position. And then this knee is going to set up for half pigeon. So just start to shift your weight a little bit further back so that you can free up the weight in this leg. And then start to walk this foot further over towards the left. I'm softening my knee down and I'm set up, so this is our half pigeon posture. So a couple things here to note. you're working on your shin being in line with the front of your mat. You're also super important here is that your hips stay square. So a lot of the times I see people kind of chilling like this. You're shifting your weight onto their right hip. You want to keep your hip bones pointing straight forward and drawing your right hip back. So that's when your props can be handy. So you can place a block underneath this hip, just so that if that hip does rest down, at least the floor is closer. And then you can also, I quite like to place another block like underneath my left thigh, and that can also just bring the floor up and help to keep your hip bones pointing straight forward instead of falling out to the side. So those are your options for support in your half pigeon. Once you've got your support, you can rest your elbows down, you can rest your head down, you can maybe even lay the arms out flat. If this doesn't feel good for your knee or for your hip, because it can be quite deep, just take a supine variation. So what that looks like is lying on your back, crossing your left knee across your left thigh, crossing your right foot across your left thigh, and then either keeping that knee down, or if you need more sensation, lifting that leg up, threading your hands behind your left thigh and then drawing it in towards your chest. So that's a supine variation of your half pigeon, and can be a great option because you can, you're not putting so much gravity and weight onto that hip. So it can be a great alternative if you need. Otherwise you're staying in your half pigeon and softening down. Yeah. Again, this posture you can hold for a decent amount of time to really work on the softening. Just because with these videos at home, generally you might not have a whole lot of time. If you do have time, feel free to pause and stay longer. If you don't have much time, we'll just move through them. So making your way back up, and then press your hands, find your 4-point base again. And we're just going to kick that right leg out, so work on straightening that leg. You can start to shift your weight forward and back. Maybe you want to shake out that leg. Just taking some movement here, maybe rolling through that hip or knee or ankle. And then we're going to set up for our dragon on the left hand side. So my left foot is coming forward. First I'm finding that lunge. So I'm softening my hips forward, bending through my left knee. And then I'm going to start to send my weight back straight in through the left leg. So inhale as I come forward. Exhale as I press back. So before we're coming into those deep stretches, we're just kind of getting those areas that we're going to focus on, a bit of warmth, a bit of mobility, a bit of fluid into those areas before we hold there for a long time. So really focus on softening your pelvis forward and then working on straightening that leg as much as you can as you come back. Good, this time being forward, take that foot out wider. So again, we're finding that external rotation from the hip joint. So my toe and knee is pointing out to the side, and then I allow that knee to soften outwards slightly. And again, you can use your props to rest your hands on. For your pigeon, you can bring a knee down. And actually, I'll just show you facing this way too, so you get an idea of what I'm doing. So I'm softening that knee out to the side. And then I'm using my props if I need, or working my elbows down. But again, if they don't touch down, that's okay. The focus here is seeing where you can soften. So where can you soften through your head, through your shoulders, where are you holding tension? And it sometimes can be in places we don't even expect it, right? We're thinking of stretching our hips here. So sometimes they'll be tensing through the glute. Then sometimes through the neck and the shoulders and the jaw can be another area where we just start to hold. We're trying to resist, trying to control the situation, control the sensation. And we're seeing if we can really just soften, allow things to drop. Allow your body to get heavy. You know, what does it feel like when you really let go and you just trust and let your body soften? can even close down your eyes if that supports you in the softening and the letting go. Okay, press through your hands, gently come back up, and then we're going to set up for our half pigeon. So again, I'll just show you this way so you can see what I mean as well. So I wiggle that foot further around and I work on softening that knee down, working on keeping my hips square. So remember, you can lie on your back for your supine variation. You can use your props either underneath your left hip or underneath your right thigh. You can use your props to rest your arms on or your head on. And then again, just practicing on softening. And that's also the point of our props, like the point of our cushions, our blankets, our blocks, our pillows, is to help us to really soften and drop into the shape. Often if we don't use our props, then we can tense a bit more, so having them there is just to help to allow the body to really release, to help us to get really deep into the sensation, and to let our body just not hold so much, knowing that it's supported. So feel that you're supported to the floor, you're supported by your blocks. Yeah, the floor's got you, the props have you, so you're good to soften, you're good to let go. This time to make our way out of this posture, we're going to shift our weight onto our left hip and start to roll to the side. So you'll be facing the side of your mat, so the longer side of your mat. We're going to take a straddle leg seated forward fold, because can't be a hip stretch if we don't do some inner thigh. So I know this can be challenging for people, so sitting on a block can be really helpful, or sitting on your cushions, just giving a bit of elevation in your hips. So you can always place a prop underneath your hips and then take the legs out, and that might just give your hamstrings a little bit more room. You can also bring a softness to your knees, so you don't have to have straight legs. Yeah, just don't feel like you have to put that pressure on yourself. You're still going to stretch the inner thigh and the legs, even with having a little bend, so that's totally fine. But we're going to work on having the legs as wide as we can, and then just start to hinge forward. So you might not create much of a hinge forward, and that's okay. Again, you can use your props, so maybe you want to use a block or whatever other elevation you have to put your arms on, or if you can, maybe even your head can get on it, maybe. But we're just working on that hinge forward, so think of sending your bum back, so sit bones back, and then hinging from the hips. So you want to work on being nice and flat through your back. So think of shoulders down your back, think of reaching the crown of your head nice and long. Feel your hips touching the floor, and so think of pressing down while also reaching forward, so you've got that beautiful length, that you're being stretched through your spine. And then just be patient with yourself. Just keep working on if you can walk your fingertips a little bit further forward now that you've stayed here for a little bit longer. Yeah, maybe now that you feel like you're nice and long and you've created that length, you can soften your forehead down somewhere. And then also notice what your feet are up to here. So we want even a slight external rotation. So just check that your feet are pointing up to the ceiling or back behind you. Same with your knees, that they're pointing up or they're rotating back. So you've got that effort of turning outwards. You've got that abduction working. Yeah, abduction. So there's this outward sensation as you start to fold. We don't want to like roll forward through our hip. We want to work on keeping that opening. So maybe doing that means you can't go as far, and that's okay. I want you to be feeling a really good sensation through the thighs. So that's the point of this stretching, is just playing with the sensation, seeing what's there, seeing what works for your range. And sometimes I like to play a little bit with moving slightly side to side. Notice that it's not bouncing, it's just a slight, almost like a wiggling out through your upper body. Just checking if there's anywhere tight where you can just kind of roll through and move through. So I know that this one's tricky and intense, but just see if you can really soften into it, see if you can learn to enjoy it. Again, you can pause this if you want to stay a bit longer, and then walk your hands back up. Should feel nice and juicy. Use your hands to bend your knees back in, and we'll just windscreen wiper them side to side. So dropping both knees over to one side and then the other. It's because we've done a lot of work in the hips, so like how we started, it was really nice to get that fluid, get that movement before our really still postures. And so now that we've done the really still postures, it's good again just to bring a bit more movement, a bit more fluid back into those joints. So that's the point of rocking side to side, just to let it all go. And that's you done. So I hope you enjoyed that stretch. I hope your hips feel nice and open now, your legs feel like they got a bit of love and attention. And I'll see you for another stretch class soon.